My name is Yehuda Polstein. I'm a funeral director with Chicago Jewish Funerals. In just a moment, we are going to begin the service for Mr. John Gran. Take a moment just now to make sure phones are on silent, as we may have been using them in the past few minutes. Officiating today's service will be Rabbi Meir Moskowitz of Chabad of Northbrook.
We are gathered here this afternoon to recognize the life, to pay respects, and to mourn the passing of John Gran, Yaakov ben Morris, beloved husband, dear father, a proud grandfather. In Hebrew, the word for a funeral is levaya. Levaya means to accompany, because the idea highlighted at the funeral is that we are accompanying the soul of a loved one. We're accompanying the soul of John from one world to the next, from one place to another, from one reality to a greater reality. It's interesting that in Hebrew it's levaya. In English, we call it funeral. Funeral means finale, it's the end. It's over, it's done. But in the Hebrew term of levaya, we are highlighting that although the physical life is limited, but there's more to an individual. We're highlighting that the soul continues in a spiritual realm. We're highlighting that our connection continues in a spiritual sense. I'll begin with the recital of a psalm. We could all say it together. First I'll say it in Hebrew, and then we could follow along in your little booklets. Psalm number 23. Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai roi le'echsar b'neisteshe yarbitzeni. Almei menuchos yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'magle tzedek laman shemoi. Gam ki elech v'geitz al maves lo irora ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha heima yanachamuni. Tarech lefanai shulchan neged seirudoi. Dishanta v'shemen roishi koisi revaya. Ach toiv v'chesed yedefuni kol yimei chayai. V'shavti beveis Adonai la'orech yamim. You could follow along in English together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of the righteous for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This week in the Torah portion, in the synagogues, we read the portion of Vayechi Yaakov, the life of Jacob. And the Parsha, the Torah portion, recounts and reflects on Jacob's life just before his passing. John, his middle name is Jacob. I believe his Hebrew name is Jacob. Yaakov is now a time that we're reflecting on his life. What he was all about, our connection with him, and what we could learn from John's life. He was born in Boston on Thanksgiving, a holiday that he always appreciated. He met Robin in high school at the age of 14, I believe, to be married in 1969. John was very involved in Jewish life wherever he was. in Beth Hillel, in the fraternity in school, through reading, through studying, through celebrating the holidays. He would retell the Pesach story, I understand, not just from the text, but from memory, from sharing the ideas, the story, the lessons from it. And he continued to read, to be engaged, to study, and to share. I had the privilege of knowing John through a mutual friend, Jack Bleichman, Jack and Denise, who brought him to a class, and he participated for a number of years with the Jewish Learning Institute, studying, questioning, sharing, and always giving an interesting perspective on the topic at hand. Beyond his artistic and creative talent, which was something that he expressed both in painting and in his professional life, the one word that I keep hearing again and again from speaking with the family, from speaking with friends, is the care that John had for others, the kindness, the thoughtfulness, the caring for friends, for family, for those that became like family. How he took care of his mother-in-law. No, I'm not about to start a joke here, but he brought his mother-in-law to live with them and took care of her. And he made people feel good. He didn't question or judge others. He just cared, authentically cared for others. And it expressed itself not just in the big things, but also very much in the little things that he did, having the other person in mind. Another aspect that I've keep hearing from family is how important family was for him, and the mutual feeling of family and connection. It's no wonder why Thanksgiving was so important, the opportunity to connect together as a family. And therefore, I think it's most appropriate as Vayechi Yaakov, as we think about the life of John, as we think about the lessons from John's life, that we hear directly from the family. One benefit, if you can call it, of the current setting is that we're all here together, intimate group, family, connection. This is not public, this is private, and we're all together. So at this point, we're going to invite the family members first, Robin via the video, which I guess will be up in a moment, and
phone.
then to hear from you as well.
Okay, I'm going to start again. Okay. I've been working on what I want to say for several days, and I don't know just how you condense 50 years to 5 minutes. I understand the need to try to make sense of something so life-changing in what seems like a split second, but it really is possible for me yet. John and I have had an incredibly long history, starting in 1960 when I was a freshman in high school and he was a sophomore. We dated through high school, and then we went to different colleges where we dated other people, but still each other when we came home for visits. We got engaged my very last semester last month of college because he wanted me to be able to pass the candle in my sorority. He actually mailed me the engagement ring so that I could do that because he was always thinking of what I would like best. We shared memories that I don't have with anybody else, and I think that's one of the things I will miss a lot. We would reminisce about old times and remember this and remember that. He did a much better job of remembering things of the past than I did. So if I didn't recall something, I could just ask him, and he usually had it at his fingertips. We took so many world trips together with many dear friends, and those were really great times. But we also took our older grandkids on trips that they too will always remember, and I'm really thankful for that. Fraternity brothers meant a lot to him. We went to all the AEPI reunions, and he loved seeing everyone. Many of the brothers have been sending short remembrances, and it's obvious that they held him in great regard. John, life will never be the same without you, and you'll be very dearly missed by everyone who knew you, and of course, especially by our family. If you want to come back to haunt me, I'm ready.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Understand me with my mask on? Okay. Do you guys mind if can I take my mask off? And I don't, everyone, are you comfortable with that? Okay. Okay. My dad. So I did not verify anything I'm about to say. I figure they're my memories, not facts. My dad was never satisfied. He was always moving the furniture. Everything in the 90s just needed a few rhinestones. He was always fixing his paintings until they were unfixable or perfect, except his family. His family was always perfect. He loved us unconditionally. When Jeff and I grew up and had our own families, it was the same. He loved Nicole and Joe unconditionally, and in turn, Harris and Alex and Foster. We were all the smartest, the strongest, the most beauteous. He believed it too. At least he made you feel like he did. I've actually never doubted it. For a young girl to grow up with that unconditional love is priceless. He accepted the people we chose to spend our time with unconditionally too. He believed in my choices, even when I was very young. He was very supportive of all my mom's businesses. At least it seemed that way to me. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but he always put on a united front. Her ventures were his ventures. He was very affectionate. Extended family was very important to him. He lost both his parents midlife. He and my mom started dating in high school, so her family had already become his family early on. His friends and his fraternity brothers were very important to him too. My dad was a very kind person. That is not only my word, but that of every single person who wrote and knew my dad. Every person. Gentle, good person, funny, warm, treated me like family, was like a father to me. He was always doing little things for people. Just last Christmas, he set up cookie trays in his room for the CNAs at his assisted living apartment. He was working on an artwork for his favorite CNA's grandson who had Down syndrome. About 10 years ago, when Joe and I had moved into our house and my dad was still driving, unbeknownst to us, he came and planted mums in our backyard. My dad was a great cook. I know if everyone could be here in person, there'd be lots of noises of agreement. Growing up, I remembered his cheese crisps, and then he got me a bowl of chocolate ice cream every night in exchange for pulling off his socks. No small feat. But anyway, he was an intuitive cook. He couldn't just tell me how to make something. It's a little of this, a little of that. When it feels heavy, you know you've had enough. For a non-cook like myself, this can be frustrating. But when I can let go and not worry about the end product, I can improvise like him. Because that's what he was doing all the time. My mom, my brother, and I were going through his stuff over FaceTime yesterday. And we kept laughing about his improvisations. The sculpture glued to a stand originally for something else so it didn't fall over. The triangular piece of wood with a coin glued to it that was glued to the top of a wooden box. Was it decoration or handle? He cut people out of old photographs and made collages with them. Why not? I'm a purist and would be afraid to alter the past like that. He had a respect for tradition and the past, but wasn't worried about altering it. Maybe because he had a long-term memory like an elephant. He could tell you what dress my mom was wearing to that dance in 1966, or the name of that friend of my grandpa's from 1980 that no one could remember. He recently painted on top of a 70-year-old portrait of his mother, painted by his uncle. I'm not sure of his intent, but I claimed it. Now I have a couple of paintings he started that I can try to finish for him. My dad was delighted by the beauty in everyday things. The uglier it was, the more he enjoyed it. He loved dollar stores. Anywhere that sold junk was his favorite place to be. And he always had a plan for his junk, whether it was the end in itself or it was to be in service of something else. He didn't have drawers full of unused junk. It all had its place. Everything was useful. Kind of like our conversations. This speech is totally like Dad's roundabout. Makes no sense. um, we had lots of nonsense conversations and spiritual conversations and random conversations. But there was always something to think about. In one of our last conversations, he asked me if the owls that were in our backyard a few years ago had come back. The next day, one did. I don't know what that means, but he knew that we all loved having those owls. I often referred to it as the best winter of my life, and now I will always associate the owls, the best and the worst winters of my life, with my dad.
I'm also going to take off my mask. So, for anybody that knew our family, even just a little, you always felt the warm presence of my father. He was the guy that everybody wanted to be around at family gatherings. He was the first one to extend his hand or both his arms for a big squeeze. He always made you feel great. He only saw your good qualities. He only wanted the best for you. He was a giver and never asked for anything in return. He was an entrepreneur and he was very hardworking. And he really cared about his employees. I remember as a teenager, he would come home from the office and tell stories about his work family. This person's son's getting married. This person's daughter just got into college. He was always so proud of everyone and their achievements. And I'm thankful that he's passed that quality down to me. My father let us grow up at our own pace with freedom, but never stopped being protective. When I was 15, I worked at Irving's Hot Dogs, which was about a mile from our house. And frequently I'd be on the night shift and would have to close the restaurant, including managing all the money. Then each night I would skateboard home, because I was only 15. And years later, I remember telling stories about this high school job at a family gathering, and somebody asked my father if he was ever worried for my safety since I was so young and responsible for all that cash. And my father, with a large smile, said, "No, why would I worry? Every night, my sonny boy," that's what he called me, closed the restaurant, got on a skateboard, and went home. So why wasn't I worried? Because every night I'd park in a discreet spot, watch him leave the restaurant, and follow him home by car. And I never knew that till he told that story at some event. My father was incredibly creative. He was an artist at heart, and painting was his medium. He and my mother would paint together. He took art classes. He just loved creating. Every present he wrapped was unique. Every birthday card he made was special. Every gift he gave had specific meaning. And his creativity carried over into his love of cooking. He was an amazing chef, but a chef without recipes. Everything he cooked was by feel, touch, and taste. Nothing he made was ever the same, but everything was always amazing. His love was endless. He always wanted a hug. He always told us he loved us. And when I got married, he loved Nikki like it was his own daughter. And he unconditionally and truly loved her. And my kids, he loved my kids. Harrison and Alex spent many nights at Grandma and Grandpa's house. And when we could pick them up the next morning, all we heard about was all the amazing things these kids did while we were gone. He always smiled, but he smiled the biggest when it had to do with his grandchildren. Last Saturday, I wrote a Facebook post when my father died. And the amount of love, support, and memories that my social network provided was amazing. And even more so were the comments about my dad. Over the years, I guess I talked about my father a lot, talked about his work ethic, his compassion, his intelligence, his warm heart. I talked about his profound impact on my life and related that to who I've become as a man. And while many people have helped shape me, including my grandparents, Mark and Laura Kramer, and Morris and Evelyn Gran, my mother, and even my little sister, my dad was a major influence. And for that, I'm thankful. Today is about remembering John as the great person that he was to all of us. And while he meant different things to different people, there was a common theme. He loved you for who you were, and that's all that mattered to him. And as I think about the current pandemic, political strife, and obvious divide that consumes our world right now, I wish there were more John Grans out there to provide the love that we all need to heal. Sunday, I went to grab my father's belongings, which was very hard to process. And as I left to go home, I ventured 10 minutes away to the last standing Irving's hot dog restaurant. And I sat outside for a while before I went in. And in my car, I ate the food, and a flood of memories overwhelmed me. I was crying and laughing, at the same time thinking about the great times that we had together. And as I left the restaurant, this time not on a skateboard, I did look around the parking lot to see if maybe I could see my dad one more time. I know that he will always be watching over me and my family, and for that I'm thankful. Dad, I love you, and I know you know that because I told you every chance I could over my lifetime. You will so be incredibly missed, but you will never be forgotten. I love you, Sonny boy.
Thank you, Robin, Jennifer, Jeffrey. The Talmud shares a story, a parable. There was once a fellow traveling in the desert, and it was hot. He was tired, thirsty, hungry, and finally he comes upon a tree. He sits down under the shade of the tree, relaxes, enjoys the fruit of the tree, drinks from the spring of water nearby, and relaxes and rests. When he's ready to leave, he says, "Tree, oh tree, how can I bless you? That you should have fruit, you already have beautiful fruit. That you should have shade, you provide the best shade. Water, there's a beautiful spring right nearby. My blessing to you," he says, "that the fruit that you produce should be like you." We think about these beautiful memories, interactions, personalities, qualities of John, and the blessing is that we internalize it and we continue that positivity, that care, and that legacy. We'll rise now as we read the Kel Male, the memorial prayer. First in Hebrew and then in English. El Male Rachamim, Sheikhin Bamreimim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechoina, Al Kanfei Ashchina, B'mailes Kedoshim Utahirim, Kezeir Harakia, Mazhirim Es Nishmas, Yaakov ben Morris, Shahalach Leilamai, Bavur Shanad Vutstoka, Badaskaras Nishmasai, Began Eden Tehim Menuchasai, Lachein Bal Harachamim, Yastirehu b'seser kanafav li'elamim. V'yitzra b'tzra chaim es nishmasai. Adonai hu nachalasai. V'yanoach al mishkavi b'shalayim. V'neimar amen. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of the presence among the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, onto the soul of John Gran, who has gone unto his eternity. May the Lord of mercy bring him under the cover of God's wings and bind his soul in the bond of eternal life. The Lord is his inheritance, and may he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
This concludes our service here at the chapel. For those of you who are online, we want to thank you for joining. In a few seconds, we're going to take a brief pause, and we will restart the stream at the very same link when we arrive at the cemetery for those who wish to join. For those of you who are going to attend the procession today, which I imagine is most of in the audience, please obtain an orange safety sticker that will go on the front portion of your windshield, as well as a magnetic flag which will attach to the roof of your vehicle. Even though it's rather close, we want to make sure that we avoid any large gaps, and we stay as close to the car in front of us as safety permits. Please be careful not to speak on your phone during the procession. Please rise as we escort the casket of Mr. John Gran and the family from the chapel.